Hello, everyone. It's right at 2 o'clock Eastern Time, so let's go ahead and jump right into our webinar today. Thank you for joining us for the UTA Training Committee's April educational webinar, Navigating Disruption in 2020, Tapping into the Virtual Commercial Truck Consumer by Commercial Truck Trader, a division of Trader Interactive. Special thank you to the UTA and the UTA Training Committee co-chairs, Amy Shahan and Jody Johnson, for inviting us to present today. My name is Nicole Gilmet, Campaign Manager for Commercial Truck Trader, a division of Trader Interactive, and I will be your webinar moderator today. Let's walk through some quick housekeeping before we begin. If you need to make any adjustments to your sound during this presentation, you'll see your audio controls in the webinar control panel, and you have the option to toggle between using computer audio or phone call if you need to change that, as well as adjust your microphone settings and volume. And if you think of any questions throughout this presentation, please enter them into the question section of the control panel. And then when we get to the Q&A portion at the end, we'll be sure to answer your questions then. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and get started. I would like to introduce you to Charles Bowles, Director of Strategic Initiatives at Commercial Truck Trader. Charles has over 25 years of experience in the commercial trucking industry, and we're thrilled to have him host today's webinar. With that, I'll go ahead and pass the mic over to you, Charles.
Thank you, Nicole. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to bring you the insights we have on succeeding in the digital world, especially while we begin to navigate through these incredibly uncertain economic times. I hope, though, that these insights that we talk about today will not only help you now, but help you navigate through the next few months and beyond when we get out of this. I work for Trader Interactive, and we offer the largest audience of consumers searching for units they need for both lifestyle and livelihood. You probably know us best through Commercial Truck Trader, but some of our other brands include Next Truck, Rock and Dirt, RV Trader, Equipment Trader, and more. The reason I mention this is that because we have such a large volume of traffic to our sites, we're able to obtain a considerable amount of buyer behavior that we can use to empirically capture and analyze. An odd change occurred over the past few weeks. Site traffic to Commercial Truck Trader in March was up 13.4% over the same period last year. There was a temporary drop on March 11th when everything hit the fan, but it's roaring back now. We're also seeing two very distinctly different dealer scenarios take place. One, some dealers have closed their doors as a result of C-19. And conversely, a significant number of dealers are telling us that they are selling commercial units at a faster clip than usual, often to buyers outside of their normal buying radii. This indicates that dealers who are able to remain open are selling vehicles to fill a demand vacuum. This demand for these classes indicates that the middle mile and the last mile have accelerated over the past few weeks as a result of the virus and its direct impact on the supply chain. Let's jump right into what digital marketing looks like in 2020. More than 75% of your potential customers are conducting internet research before generating a single connection or lead to you. And this was prior to the outbreak, which has sure only accelerated this shift. And when we say shift, we don't mean a temporary swing. As we come out of this, you'll see that buyer behavior has permanently changed. Americans are actually checking their phone an average of 80 times a day. This is 80 touch points that you have an opportunity to connect with your consumer. And by the way, if you don't believe me, how many of you have already checked your phone during this webinar? It's constant. And now more than ever, when people continuously are turning to their phones for entertainment, news, and resources, you have to get their attention with your online presence. The opportunity to capture this audience is made easier with the tools of digital marketing, and we're going to go through some of those. So we just talked about what's happening in digital marketing today and that shift. Now let's take a minute to look at who the commercial consumer is in 2020. Could the person spending this much time on their phone really be your target market? You'd be surprised. We found that your average commercial truck buyer is a Gen X to an early baby boomer between 45 and 65. But not to be forgotten, another 26% of truck buyers are aged 25 to 44. This is the millennial who's just getting started on their career, getting ready to take over the family business, and their influence should not be overlooked. They're a quarter of our market. I found this slide to be very interesting. We've broken it into millennials and boomers, millennials being ages 25 to 44 and boomers being 45 to 65, which I unfortunately fall into the top end of the second. Millennials are spending a total of 3 hours every day looking at their phone. 3 hours. Your boomer is spending an average of 2.8 hours on the phone every day. Look at that. The difference between how much screen time your millennial is on the phone and your boomer is on the phone is only 12 minutes a day. In other industries, we're accustomed to instant gratification and same-day deliveries. These consumer habits are transferring over now to our industry as well. 62% of commercial truck buyers want a response from a dealer within an hour or that same day. And it's getting closer to the hour rather than the same day, particularly as we face really serious supply and demand changes. 44% of these particular consumers said they would contact another seller if they didn't hear from the dealer in a timely manner. And part of that is that unit ubiquity is defining us. It's definitely a challenge. If dealers have similar inventory, response rates are going to be critical in order to capture that business, because otherwise somebody can just move on. If you don't respond quickly, they'll move on to another dealer who has that same inventory. People are expecting instant communication during times of normalcy, but in this economic environment now, it's even more important that as a dealer, you're answering your customers in a timely manner. So as your consumers spending time online and looking for instant gratification in the current environment, it's important that you capture them at the 0 moment of truth. Google coined that term, 0 moment of truth, in 2011 and described it as really the research that's conducted online about a product or service before a buyer takes an action. This is the time a consumer spends on their own to do their research. So consumers come to you much more prepared than in the past. Remember a couple slides back, we talked about at least 75%, 3/4 of these consumers are already doing most of their research, if not all of it, prior to contacting you. This is what we're talking about. If you don't have a strong online presence, these consumers are likely to look you over in favor of other brands they can gather more information from online. It's especially crucial now as show floors close and we limit the amount of human interaction. It makes your online presence so much more important, and you have to be engaging and you have to attract customers to these units. So where do you start? And I think that's the question we often always ask. Well, I get that, but what do I do? How do I start? The most important thing is to hone your online listings. Remember, if you don't have a strong presentation and representation of your commercial units, buyers will overlook you and turn to another dealer. It's not hard. It's as easy as getting paid, P-A-I-D. We spoke about this last year at a UTA webinar, but it's worth repeating. These 4 best digital practices are the differentiators between your online listings and those of your competitors. We know empirically that following these practices drive much higher buyer engagement. So let's go through them really quickly. We've been through them before, but they're worth repeating. The P in paid stands for price. When talking about price, it's important to be transparent, and it's important first and foremost, let me back up. Represent the price. If you don't put a price down, buyers will not engage for that unit. I mean, unless it's something very, very specific and hard to find, like a vacuum truck or something. If it's a conventional sleeper or a dump truck, if you don't put price in it, and we know this from watching buyer behavior, people just move on to another listing. We have actually seen, and this is actually true, that buyers will engage with a listing that has a higher than market value price than they will with vehicles that have no price in the listing. Make sure to include information regarding the incentives and what are those qualifying factors for those specific incentives. Some people aren't going to qualify for certain ones. It's really important to point those out. All right, so that's P, that was price. The A stands for appearance. This is important for how your units appear in search results on Google. Include all keywords associated with your units. Think of how consumers are searching and include those words. Remember, people, much to the chagrin of our OEMs, our manufacturers, people don't search primarily by brand. They search by the function, job, or application of the vehicle. Searches such as, let's say, dump truck for sale near me, or conventional sleeper for sale, Houston, Texas. That's how people search. So it's important to have those terms within your description itself. So that's A, appearance, how you appear in search results. The I in page stands for images. Visuals actually increase memory retention 42%. Be sure to include as many images and videos as possible to support the description you provide. Remember, video is becoming a really big thing. YouTube is now the #2 search engine in the world. That's just incredible. So we talked about price, we talked about appearance, we talked about images. The final in paid is the D is description. Your description should highlight all the capabilities of the unit and have its best features stand out. Mix in technical information with a vivid description to captivate your audience and provide them with the information they need. So paid is really simple. It's blocking and tackling. But like I said to Ken Taylor yesterday of Commercial Truck Training, when he and I had a conversation, it is the blocking and tackling that wins sales. Price, appearance, images, and description. Now that we have a little bit of time while we're at home, this is the time to really hone these descriptions. If you're looking to take your online listings to the next level, you can also take the following steps. Considering using a third-party marketplace like, let's say, Truck Paper or Next Truck or Commercial Truck Trader, my favorite, to increase the amount of views and reach your listings receive. Activate advertising through marketplaces. There's other advertising within those marketplaces too that you can do. Look at options you have with your third-party marketplace partners to increase how high your listings render in search results. The current uncertain times we're facing won't last forever. While your team is working from home or has some minimal engagement on the show floor, now's the time to create these powerful descriptions and add keywords to your listings. By doing this now, your dealership will be one step ahead when we regain that sense of normalcy, hopefully sooner than later. In addition to honing your online skills, utilize retargeting to expand your listings. That word retargeting we've spoken about for about 1.5 years now. It's a valuable way of doing things because unlike traditional advertising that really displays to a broad audience, retargeting allows you to focus your ad spend on consumers you know that are already in market and have an interest for your product. How does retargeting work? If you've ever been on Amazon looking at a pair of shoes and then you go to either foxnews.com or cnn.com or some other site, and those shoes seem to follow you in the form of an ad, that's retargeting. A user visits your website and then leaves your site, but your ad is shown to them again and again across millions of websites. As our consumers are spending more time online, the use of retargeting to target them makes much more sense and is extraordinarily effective in bringing people back to your units. When utilizing a third party for marketplace or retargeting, Be sure to take advantage of the reporting services. If you don't know what the metrics are, you don't know whether you're spending the money wisely, you don't know if there are things you can do to generate better results. Use this time to monitor the performance of what you're doing right now. Most of your providers are going to have back-end tools that allow you to get a real idea of the metrics and engagement in whatever you're particularly your ads you're investing in right now. This is also beneficial because you can manage your leads from anywhere when you're out working remotely. Even if you're not in the office, these tools are available to you. It's important that you look at these metrics and you use them to leverage better results. Beyond your online listings, content is another way to attract and engage your audience. I promise content is something very attainable for dealers. It's not difficult. Content creation doesn't have to be overly complicated. It doesn't have to be lengthy. It doesn't have to be drawn out. It can be easy. Your consumers will simply benefit by you sharing your industry insight. Remember, you're the expert, you're the authority, you're the person they're turning to in order to get a better understanding of not only the vehicle, but of its uses and how it can be used. Your consumers don't have time to sit and read a long article anyway. So what we suggest is you create digestible content that gets straight to the point. Some of these easy forms of content include something called listicles. It sounds like I'm lisping even worse, but it just means content in the form of a list. These are a lot of what you might see shared on Facebook. For example, top vacations of 2020 or greatest sports moments of all time. Just because you see them for topics in things other than truck industry doesn't mean they can't apply or translate to our industry. Create a list and expand on each topic. Let's see, for example, go through tips and tricks on maintaining your trucks, or buying work trucks, or long haul trucking. Think of things you speak with your buyers about all day long when you're on the lot with them. And then how can you turn that into a blog post? Once your content is created, you can use it to share on other platforms, and we definitely recommend that. So you have your online listings, you have your content, but how else can you separate yourself from your competitors? By sharing all of those things and more on social media. And I can tell you, over the past 3 weeks, really since March 11th, when everything hit the fan, what we've seen is a dramatic increase in social media usage. What can you post to gain traffic? Take some inspiration from your OEMs and how they post. Take a look at some things like International Trucks posts, for example. Share posts about keeping truckers safe on the road. Share podcasts and YouTube videos that your consumers will find interesting. Look to industry leaders and relevant companies to see what they're posting and ask yourself if it could be relevant to your dealerships and your consumers. Let's touch on sharing videos specifically. It's not hard to imagine why videos are so popular these days. With consumers searching for units outside of typical business hours, you want to be sure you can deliver exactly what they're looking for when it's most convenient for them. They're not out looking on your lot, but you can give them a very similar experience. Use this time that we have right now to film in-depth video walkarounds. Bring the vehicles directly to your consumers through these videos. By the way, OEMs like Kenworth share a lot of great content on their YouTube channel that you can grab and repost to your channel without having to create your own. We presented a webinar to the UTA last year on social media best practices. I think it was a few months ago, as a matter of fact. And we can send you a link to view that webinar recording to dive even deeper, and we'll be glad to share that link as well. Okay, so now you have your listings and you've created and shared content to your social media channels. But what else can you really do to create that lasting impression on your consumer? With email, you can put yourself directly in the inbox of your consumer as a constant reminder of the expertise you can offer to them during this equipment buying journey that they're on right now. There's something called email service providers, and they can help in creating email campaigns quickly. There are a number of them out there. They also help you create and monitor your email performance without an ESP or email service provider. You can't track your metrics and know how effective your marketing campaigns are. If you're new to the email world, and particularly we're all familiar with email, but if you're new to the campaign world with email, take your time and look for the right ESP. Make sure your ESP has a pre-made template that you can use to make creating emails simple and can accommodate the size of your mail list. Contact your ESP before you choose one to get an idea of how helpful they are. Really call them and see what their customer service is like, because once you choose one, you want to feel comfortable with them. It's important not only to send emails to folks in your database or from your CRM or your contact list, but you also need to track those email performance metrics. If you're focused on creating an increase in website traffic, check the click-through rates of your emails. This shows you how many people are clicking through on your emails to take a look at your website. For authenticity and brand awareness, check open rates to see how many people are reading the information you're providing them within the email. And if you're looking to boost sales, which, dear Lord, we all are right now, your email engagement rate is important to see how many people engaged with the content in your email. Some best practices for email include sharing valuable content, repurpose what you're already sharing on social media, include any education, promotions, and informations around the products and services that your customers would find helpful. Share inventory and listings directly to your customers. Be sure to write attention-grabbing headlines and include a call to action that leads them to take the next step, like visiting a page on your website and filling out a contact form. We'll present a more in-depth email marketing webinar at a later date where we can dive a little deeper into setting up an email campaign, so be on the lookout for that. So we've been through a lot, and with all that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Nicole for our Q&A portion of today's webinar. We want to have time to answer any questions that may have arisen, and God bless everybody in this very difficult time. Back to you, Nicole.
Thank you, Charles. We've received just a few questions so far, but if you haven't submitted one yet and you would like to, now is your chance to enter them into that question section of your control panel. So we can get started with the first question that we have is, how can we make sure that we're able to be available to our customers at this time?
That is a really great question. The availability is, it has to be promoted. And one of the reasons is we're hearing a lot on the news that dealerships are physically closed, but we're not hearing a lot that they're also open for business virtually. And certainly in many cases in service as well. It really is important in the content that you're delivering, whether it's via email, whether it's on your website, whether it's in the descriptions on your marketplace listings on like Next Truck or Truck Paper or Commercial Truck Trader. Make sure to include that information. We're open for business. That's really key. And you know, people, what we have seen, and we don't know if this is going to stick or not, but we're seeing more emails than we have in the past couple of years. People maybe don't realize that your phone at work is actually your mobile phone, or can transfer those calls too. So make sure that you promote that you're indeed open for business.
Great, thank you, Charles. And I am getting a couple questions about the recording and this deck being available after today's call. And yes, it will be. We will be sending an email out by tomorrow with the recording. So if you missed anything, you'll be able to listen to it again.
That's great. I'm going to dial it up just so I can hear my lilting tones again.
And we have one more question. What is one thing truck sales reps should be doing now?
Oh man, That's another really good question. It's something we should all be doing. Um, we should all be looking at our contact database that we have, our list of our contacts, and call them. Like I mentioned before, I spoke with Ken Taylor yesterday from Commercial Truck Training, and he is committed to calling 10 of his customers every day. Not necessarily to sell them something, but just to check in on them. It's that's such a wonderful way of creating that long-term relationship. So that's definitely one way. Also, as you look through your lease history, you'll be seeing who's coming back off track leases or other types of leases. Get ahead and call those people. Make sure and contact them. We right now, what we're finding is that there is a lot of demand for vehicles, but there's not a lot of perceived supply because people think dealerships are closed or very limited. It's important that we reach out and let people know that we're open for business right now, not only for service, but for sales, and explain to them how that would work, whether or not you would meet them on the lot, sign a couple things and hand them the keys after you've done everything else online. But it is really important to go back and mine your database, mine your contacts, and ask for referrals because we know there's demand out there for the middle mile and last mile deliveries. With Amazon's increase of 100,000 workers just to meet orders, that's a huge number of additional vans, trucks, all kinds of vehicles that need to be sold in order to meet this demand. So I say this without trying to be without trying to be an opportunist, but there is opportunity here to sell more trucks to actually help our economy be safe and grow. So this is the time to look everywhere you can, under every rock, and make those contacts and make sure you're keeping up with your relationships.
Great. And we have another question. Were you talking about an app to run the back end earlier in the presentation?
Yeah, and most of your third-party marketplace providers, the marketplaces are big classified sites, have some form of reporting on the back end. Some are more robust than others. Ones that's where you want to really go in and look and see how many impressions a particular vehicle is getting, how many times it's been viewed. And you can start just there and get an indication of what's working and what's not working and why you're getting leads for certain vehicles but not others. But then there's some other tools as well. There's things there's scarcity and demand tools where with some providers you can actually say what vehicles are being searched a lot in my area where there are not a lot of them in the market. That's called scarcity. There's a lot of demand for them, but there's not a lot of supply. That gives you an idea, well, maybe this is a time that I do go to an auction and I do pick up two of X model because there's a lot of demand for it in my market. Those are some of the type of tools that really are important to move us to the next level, particularly now in this digital phase that we've been pushed here much faster than we wanted to be here, but we're here now and it's not going to change. So what we need to do is take advantage of those tools that are provided to you by third-party marketplaces, and also website providers have a good deal of metrics on their back end as well.
Charles, another question we have is, does anybody have a market share percentage between Commercial Truck Trader, Truck Paper, Next Truck, eBay, etc., and basically what platform sells what percentage of trucks in the industry?
Yes, and I'm not going to tell you that, but we do track that, and we do have marketing material along those lines. This is these UTA presentations are brand agnostic. We recognize that everybody in the UTA and all the associate members are a very important part of the industry. So this, I don't want to advertise for one over the other. But I'll say this, that no single provider is going to give you 100% coverage of the marketplace. and it's important to feather 1, 2, maybe 3 in there. And then it's important to look at the results. And remember this, there's going to be some duplication of buyers going from one marketplace to another, but there's not 100% duplication. In most cases, there's maybe 50% duplication. So when you add that secondary marketplace, you're actually increasing your reach substantially. And another thing is you're representing that same vehicle in a different venue. And we've seen that sometimes somebody will look at it on one platform and then go to another and then engage there. So it's really important to not look at it from one or the. I'd love to just sell you on what we do, but it's important that you do multiple things, particularly now, in order to generate those results.
Great, and we do have 2 more questions in the queue. The first one is, are there particular keywords that lead to greater click-through, i.e. financing, warranty, etc.?
That's a good question too. Financing is very important. Those keywords are, so the easy thing to, let's say we're building a description for a vehicle. First and foremost, we're going to build it with a vocation, application, or job associated with that vehicle. What does the vehicle do? As you know, truck buyers don't buy based primarily on trim level. They're more it's more important for the job that this vehicle is going to do. Secondarily, they do want to know about payments. They want to know about financing. Those are extremely important to them. Service and maintenance is also very important to them. Much farther down are things like trim level and stuff like that. And I can tell you what we've seen over the past few weeks already is that the average radius from which people are willing to search and buy vehicles has expanded. And that's because of the perceived lack of supply and the greater demand right now. So really, so in terms of importance, we've got the job function of the vehicle. We then would look at finance is very important. Service, maintenance, those are much more important than the trim level of the vehicle, if that makes any sense.
It does. And how many pictures is too many in an ad, and how many should you have?
That's like saying how many chocolate eggs in an Easter basket are too many. I can tell you, we have found that the engagement grows the more photographs are on a listing. We recommend 25 photographs, and that's all corners of the vehicle. That's if it's a used vehicle, the rubber. It's also the interior, it's the dash, it's the engine itself. All those things are critical from many different angles. And if the vehicle has an upfit, you definitely want to show that upfit in action. So if it has a dump body, you want to show that dump body raised. This is an interesting thing about that, by the way. When you have a dump truck on your lot and the body is raised, more people pull in and look at it than when the dump is down. Well, that same thing holds true online. We see greater engagement of particular vehicle listings when the upfit is actually shown in action, whether it's a dump up, whether if it's a van with drawers open, or anything, or a crane actually hoisting something, or a sliding side door on a van with a pallet going inside of it. When we do those things, the engagement increases dramatically.
Awesome. And last question we received is, any real data on video ads versus still photos and success with selling it, meaning a higher interest and time looking at the ad or more engagement?
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of studies out. And really what we're seeing is that the engagement with video is increasing extraordinarily fast. And part of that is due to the fact that people are doing even more research now than they did before contacting the dealership. If you look at YouTube, and I think every single person does, whether you're looking to find out how to fix something or you're watching some crazy video, you're spending time on it. But what we also see is that professionally, video is gaining traction in the commercial space. Photographs are very, very important. Videos with walkarounds, and when we're talking about a walkaround, it's not an agency cut. It's not a perfect OEM one. It's Charles Bowles, the commercial sales manager, walking around a truck, just talking about it and showing the features, just as I would if you were standing next to me on the lot. Of course, 6 feet apart, but standing next to me going through it. That's really what people are looking for, and they don't have to be artistic. They don't have to be long. You know, a 2 or 3 minute walk around is about as much as anybody can tolerate, and by that point, they've got a really good understanding of that vehicle. So if somebody engages in that video, they are much farther down the sales funnel than somebody that simply reads a description.
Perfect. And this question is just a follow-up to that. You touched on a lot of the answers to this just now, but how many listings do you see with video? How long should a video be? And should we feature a salesperson or just a voice, which you kind of mentioned?
Yeah, it's really important now that there is a person in the video, and you simply can point the phone at yourself and talk for a couple seconds, and then turn it around and show the truck. People do want that physical engagement with a real person. In terms of length, you know, really 3 minutes is plenty, and 3 minutes is an eternity when you're doing a video walk around, because you're thinking to yourself, oh, man, did I just say that word wrong, or whatever. It's not important. What people are looking at is the vehicle and the honesty and the authority that salesperson is exuding. That's really what it comes down to. In terms of how much video is now on commercial vehicles, not nearly as much as it should be. Remember, 3 years ago, we were begging people to put photographs of their vehicles online, and we've gotten to that point. You guys at the UTA have done an extraordinary job of developing that education. The next step now is to really promote video, because it does drive engagement.
Perfect. Well, that looks like all the questions we have. Thank you so much to everybody who has submitted a question and for joining today. Any final thoughts from you, Charles, that you'd like to share before I go into a couple of resources that we would like to give everyone before we end today's webinar?
No, just thank you for your support, and thank you to the UTA, which is navigating these very difficult times with such authority, such professionalism, and such grace. We appreciate all that you do as an organization, and we appreciate all your members.
Awesome. So we'll shift over to the next slide, which is just going to talk through a couple of helpful resources that we have available. We do know that the current economy is on your mind. So at Commercial Truck Trader, we are here to help. We've created an entire virtual retailing resource center at truckmediakit.com for UTA members. And this is a resource center that includes guides, trend reports, videos, and articles, all aiming to help you and your dealership cope during these turbulent times. Again, you can visit www.truckmediakit.com to view all of these resources available to you. And we will send you that email after today's presentation with this link included, as well as a recording of the webinar and some of the other resources we mentioned, like that social media best practices webinar. And thank you again for being a part of this webinar. Charles and I really appreciate all of you and the UTA for having us. Feel free to reach out to us at marketing@traderinteractive.com if we did miss any questions, or if you want to submit one that you thought of afterwards. And please keep an eye out for future webinars, as Charles mentioned, where we can dive deeper into some of the strategies we mentioned today. We're happy to hear feedback on this webinar, answer any questions you might have, and help you perfect your digital strategy during these times and beyond. Thank you again to the UTA for having us, and to all of you for tuning in to the UTA Training Committee's April educational webinar. Stay safe and take care.
See ya.